We're in Proverbs 8 this morning, Proverbs chapter 8. If you have your Bibles, you can go ahead and turn there. Proverbs chapter 8. If you don't have your Bibles, that's okay. We have one for you in the pews, that black Bible, page 532. Page 532 in your pew Bibles, Proverbs 8. As you turn there, let me ask you this. How many of you have seen the movie, The Hunt for Red October? You just aged yourself. Although Josh, man, I'm hanging in there for the young ones, right, and doing it. Hunt for Red October. Are you familiar with Hunt for Red October? I just finished reading, because I'd seen the movie. I wanted to read the book. Tom Clancy wrote that book a long time ago. Just finished reading that book. That movie was done in 1990. Some of you are going, I wasn't born yet, Pastor Rick, when that movie was made. But I was thinking about Proverbs 8 this week and just finishing Clancy's book in Hunt for October. A scene came vividly to mind that I think helps us with our text today. Jack Ryan is the character in a lot of Clancy's books, right? He is a CIA agent. In The Hunt for Red October, as you get to the end of the book, just so you know, I'm going to ruin the movie for you if you haven't seen it in just a second. But Jack Ryan he's actually manning, he's driving a Russian submarine, right, that has been taken over by the Americans. Now, Jack Ryan's a CIA agent. He is not a submarine driver, right? So he's in an unfamiliar place. He's in a place that's hard, a place that he doesn't understand, and a place that he's just scared to death, right? But he's driving this Russian sub, and in the Russian sub is the Russian commander who has turned over the sub to the Americans, as well as an American commander. So one on his right, one on his left, both giving Jack Ryan instructions to do it. But here's the situation. There are two missiles flying at Jack Ryan in this sub, right? There's a Russian sub who has discovered that the Americans have taken over the sub, and so they want to destroy it and everything that is in it. And so they've set off these two missiles, and they're one following the other. So here's Jack Ryan driving the sub with two missiles coming at him, right? This is a crazy place, crazy place. While he's doing that, the Russian commander and the American commander are both giving him instructions, and this is what it says in the book. Jack was terrified, but even more frightened of fouling up. Have you ever been in that place? He had to assume that both commanders knew what they were talking about. He had to assume that both commanders knew what they were talking about. And indeed, as he followed their commands, so I'll give you the story, they managed to miss the first missile altogether. It went flying by them. The second missile hit them, exploded, but didn't do a lot of damage, and so they're moving on. As you move on in the story, the next scene is this. Another missile is now coming from this Russian attack sub, and the Russian commander is telling Jack Ryan, go right at the missile, and go as fast as you can. Crazy instructions, right? You're going to drive the sub into the missile, but here's what the Russian commander knew, that if that contact was made in a certain amount of distance, the missile would not explode. And so all of a sudden they hit the missile diverts off, and nothing happens, right? But then it gets even crazier. The Russian commander says, now aim straight at the attack sub. This is where I'm going to ruin the story for you, just so you know. So Jack Ryan's listen, he's driving this sub, he's just doing what he is told. And he starts going right at the attack sub, and he goes to the attack sub, and they make contact with the attack sub, blows a whole big hole in the attack sub, they go to the bottom, blah, 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 and Jack Ryan wins. See, I just ruined the movie for you. You should still go see it. You might even want to read the book. It's really good. But hey, you're going, how in the world is that Proverbs 8? Well, I have the rest of the sermon to share. Why do I share it? Well, because this morning in our study of Proverbs 8, Solomon turns from his attention on avoiding sin in chapters 5 and 7, and some of you are really glad that we're done with those chapters, right? Turns his attention. Frank, can you just turn me down a little bit? I'm hearing all kind of weird feedback, and it doesn't bother anybody else, but it bothers me if a person's done that. Thank you, that's great. Attention on avoiding sin in 5 and 7 tells us to go full speed ahead towards wisdom. And like Jack Ryan, who had to trust the voice of the commander, right? Someone, listen, this Russian commander was instrumental in building the sub. He knew how the sub was built. He knew how it operated. He knew how the other subs built and how they operated. And he had to trust the words of the commander to just do what he said. And we are instructed to trust the one who has made heaven and earth and all that is in it for how it works. And even when it doesn't make sense, to follow the orders of the commander. If you're just joining us, we've been in Proverbs all summer, both in our preaching series, as well as some of you in small groups. And it has been really pretty simple, right? The book of Proverbs is really pretty simple. There's this guy, Solomon, the wisest, biblically, also historically known as one of the wisest men ever to walk on the planet. And he writes poetry and proverbs to everyone. He says, I'm going to write to the most naive and simple person, and I'm going to write to the most intellectual and complicated person, right? Everybody in between. He writes to everyone, and he writes to us. And he writes about how we are instructed to trust the one who has made heaven and earth. Why? Because he is giving us skills for living well in God's world. And he tells us two things over and over. He tells us to avoid what? Starts with an F, has an O-O-L-I-S-H-N-E-S-S. Foolishness, thank you. He tells us to avoid foolishness and head towards wisdom. Right? You want the book of Proverbs? You should still read it. But there's the theme. Avoid foolishness and run hard towards wisdom. I don't know what life is like for you this morning. I don't know the places that you are, the decisions that you're making, the reality of the circumstances that you find yourself in, but I know you need wisdom. I know you need wisdom. We are Jack Ryan sitting at the wheel, and we are dependent on someone outside of ourselves to give us instructions for living. And in Proverbs 8, we are inspired in that way. So let's turn to the chapter. We're going to take it in 3 sections. I'll read it in 3 sections. The first section is verses 1 through 11. Proverbs 8, verses 1 through 11. As we read the word, we understand that the word is the word of God. Does not wisdom call? Does not understanding raise her voice? On the heights beside the way, at the crossroads she takes her stand. Beside the gates in front of the town, at the entrance of the portals she cries aloud. To you, O men, I call, and my cry is to the children of man. O simple ones, learn prudence. O fools, learn sense. Hear, for I will speak noble things, and from my lips will come what is right. For my mouth will utter truth. Wickedness is an abomination to my lips. All the words of my mouth are righteous. There is nothing twisted or crooked in them. They are all straight to him who understands, and right to those who find knowledge. Take my instruction instead of silver, and knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than jewels, and all that you may desire cannot compare with her. You know, there are sometimes that man-made chapter divisions can really get in the way. You do understand this, right? The Bible was written as one continuous story. We've put chapter divisions in so that preachers have places to stop every once in a while on a Sunday morning, right? But this division from the end of chapter 7 to chapter 8 is a bit unfortunate, in my opinion. Because when we hear the opening line of Proverbs 8, does not wisdom call, we have to remember where we were last week at the end of Proverbs 7. Do you remember? If you look for Proverbs 7, verses 25, let not your heart turn aside to her. She is the forbidden woman. She is the one who represents and is the embodiment of sin. Let not your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. For many a victim has she laid low, and all her slain are a mighty throng. Her house is the way to Sheol, going down to the chambers of death. That's where we were. We're in that place of temptation, that place of desire of following after sin. We were in the trap of the forbidden woman. the consequences of sin. We are on our way to hell and going down to the chambers of death. So from that very dark and hopeless place, now hear verse 1 of Proverbs 8. Does not wisdom call? There is a voice, people of God, in that wilderness of temptation and sin. And it's the personification of wisdom. Lady Wisdom is throwing us a lifeline in Proverbs 8, verse 1. And there are three really encouraging things to see really quickly in verses 1 through 5. The first is that wisdom actually calls. It says, understanding raises her voice. Wisdom, listen, is not tucked away in some secret box that God holds, and we have to make our way to it. We have to earn our way in it. Wisdom is not encrypted in the Word of God so that only the intellectual can understand, that only the Bible scholar can see. No, it says wisdom just simply stands and calls. And in our desperate place, wisdom is calling out, wants to be heard. Verse 2, it says wisdom is on the heights. It's at the crossroads. It's beside the gates. It's at the entrance of the portals. Wisdom is there, and wisdom cries out. Good news this morning that in the midst of our desperate places, wisdom stands and cries out to us. Wisdom has come to us. Second, see that wisdom cries out to us. Like, why in the world would wisdom cry out to me? Verses 4 and 5. To you, O men, I call. My cry is to the children of man, O simple ones. And my favorite, Mr. T. Oh, you fool. Wisdom cries out to you. He doesn't just cry to the wise, to those who can figure it out. Wisdom cries to everyone. Listen, even to you. There does not seem to be a person here in this text that is not given a chance to hear wisdom. It is not too late. You are not too far gone. Wisdom sees you. Wisdom cries out to you. Thirdly, and I love this, it's actually the first thing that I noticed as I read the text, the call of wisdom stands as a rival to the call of the wicked. Wisdom exists in order to save us from temptation. When we're about to walk off the cliff, the proverbial cliff, right? Wisdom doesn't say, go ahead, do it your way. Wisdom cries out. It's calling to you, stop! There's a better way. And it stands even in the midst of where wickedness stands. Wisdom stands as a voice of hope in the most hopeless of places. When we compare these verses to verses in Proverbs 7 where the forbidden woman called from, we see that wisdom stands alongside the wicked. So as we often hear the call of temptation, we only need to listen again to hear the call of wisdom. I've never liked the cartoon depiction of the devil on one shoulder and the angel on the other. I feel like it downplays the angel, right? This is some even battle. It's not an even battle. The angel always wins, right? So God always wins, right? So I never quite liked that. But as I read this text, actually that image came to me. And not in the sense of competition, but in the sense that wherever wickedness is, God is as well, and He's calling for you to be wise. I don't know about you. That's comforting to me. Because sometimes the voice of temptation and the voice of sin seems so loud and so compelling that I think maybe God has left. But He hasn't. Wisdom rivals wickedness, and He calls to save you. And notice the call of wisdom in verses 6 through 11 and what she offers. She promises to speak noble things. She says, from my lips will come what is right. My mouth will utter truth. All the words of my mouth are righteous. There is nothing wicked. There is nothing deceitful on my lips. There is nothing twisted or crooked in them. And as we read that, I kind of want us to take a breath and imagine that there's a voice that's always right. There's a voice that is always noble. There's a voice that always has you headed towards the right place. That as the world has been made, and one who knows it because he made it has a right way, and that voice calls you to that place. It's not crooked. It's not twisted. It's not filled with hate. It's not filled with deception. It's not a politician. Did I say that? Can you imagine a friend who is always right? Not thinks they're always right, but they're actually always right. They understand how everything works and speak always for your best interest. Wisdom calls out to you, and this is what she offers. Wisdom goes on and says, hey, take my instruction and knowledge, for they are better than silver or gold. They're better than the things that we make idols of. They're better than the things that we often follow in its deception. They're often better than anything we could imagine. They are better than gold and silver. My wisdom is better than jewels. The call of wisdom has come, and it has come to save us. I like Ray Ortland's comment. It's a quick comment, but I think it's helpful. Biblical wisdom is more than handy tips. Sometimes we think of biblical wisdom as just, oh, this is a good idea. No, Ortland says wisdom is the secret code to reality of how things work. Solomon writes Proverbs 5-7 to say to us that the struggle is real, and he understands that temptation is strong, and we get it, and the consequences of our wrong actions are serious, as he warns us, but then says these marvelous words of hope in 8:1. Oh, but does not wisdom call? Does not understanding raise her voice? Indeed it does. But there's a huge question here. Your pastor likes to be honest. We're going to be honest this morning. There's a huge question. How can we know if this wisdom is trustworthy? We've had a lot of people tell us a lot of things that we think is good when they hear it, but it ends up being bankrupt. This sounds good, but how do I know this lady wisdom is trustworthy? Well, Solomon hears your question. He replies in verses 12-31. It's a long section of this text. I'm going to read it. Ask the Spirit of God to speak to you as it is read over you. Solomon writes, I, wisdom, dwell with prudence, and I find knowledge and discretion. The fear of the Lord is hatred of evil, pride and arrogance in the way of evil, and perverted speech I hate. I have counsel and sound wisdom. I have insight. I have strength. He says in verse 15, by me kings reign and rulers decree what is just. By me princes rule and nobles, all who govern justly. I love, says wisdom, those who love me, and those who seek me diligently find me. Riches and honor are with me, enduring wealth and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, even fine gold, and my yield than choice silver. I walk in the way of righteousness, in the paths of justice, granting an inheritance to those who love me and filling their treasuries. The Lord actually possessed me, wisdom, at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts of old. Ages ago, I was set up at the first before the beginning of the earth. When there were no depths, I was brought forth. When there were no springs abounding with water, before the mountains had been shaped, before the hills I was brought forth, before he had made the earth with its fields, or the first of the dust of the world. When he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep, when he made firm the skies above, when he established the foundations of the deep, when he assigned to the sea its limit, so that the waters might not transgress his command, when he marked out the foundations of the earth, then I was beside him like a master workman, and I was daily in his delight. rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited world, and delighting in the children of man. I believe that this section begins to describe for us the trustworthiness of wisdom. Let me try to do that briefly. Verses 12 through 21 point to a result of wisdom that should gain your trust. It is as if Solomon, as he writes this, is saying, go ahead, look at history. As I often say, look in the rearview mirror, look at the things behind you. Look at history and see the difference between those who walk in the wisdom of God's laws compared to others who operate in the wisdom of their own gods. The personification of wisdom says, by me, kings reign, and rulers decree what is just. By me, princes rule, and nobles all govern justly. In the forefront of Solomon's mind must be his own dad, right? You remember who Solomon's dad was? David. King David. David was certainly an example of suffering when compelled by temptation, right? We know those stories. But listen, David, when he followed wisdom, when he followed in the ways of God, experienced ridiculous victory. I wanted to read all of 2 Samuel 8 for you again today, but the crock pot is on, but it's going to dry up, right? But you could go back today and read and follow back to 2 Samuel 7 or 2 Samuel 9 and begin to see the ridiculous things that God told David to do. But in them, he found victory. While those who opposed him, Saul especially, found disaster and implosion. I think that's what Solomon is saying. Let's look back and let's see that those who follow after wisdom experience victory, while those who follow their own gods eventually implode. I ran into an interesting story this week that I couldn't escape. It's not a story that I'd not heard, and maybe some of you smarter than me have. It's the story of Utnapishtim. Anybody ever hear of Utnapishtim? I love telling new stories to you all. Good. Utnapishtim was supposedly, in Greek lore, a Babylonian hero who would have lived in the time of Noah. And in the time of Noah, supposedly Utnapishtim, a brilliant man, his name means genius or super genius, a brilliant man, he also built a boat. He was instructed by his gods to do so. And as a genius, he began to build this boat. And listen, to contrast it, Noah in his day was simply just described as what? A man after God. A man of God, righteous in the eyes of others. That's Noah's description. Super genius is Utnapishtim's name. So they both build boats, and each of their traditions, they both survived. But later research has shown that Utnapishtim's boat was a 200-foot cube. 200 foot long, 200 foot high, 200 foot wide. And researchers have they've gone back and seen this in Greek mythology. Greek mythology tells us that this is exactly what it does. And you put a 200-foot boat cubed in water, it displaces water 200,000 tons, and you know what it'll do? It'll sink like a rock. Noah, we know biblically, by God's instruction, built a boat 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high, and a water displacement of just 43,300 tons. And science tells us it would have survived. I don't know if Utnapishtim actually existed. But what I do know is that following after God's wisdom brings victory. Why do I tell you the story? Well, I think It's the kind of story that Solomon is telling here as he points to the trustworthiness of the wisdom that comes from God. Time and time again, before Solomon's day and after it, there is proof that those who walk in the way of God, who walk in wisdom, walk in victory. Maybe a summary of these early verses here is in verse 19. It's actually a repetition of a verse previous. Wisdom says, my fruit, the things that happen as a result of wisdom, is better than gold, even fine gold. And my yield than choice silver. My wisdom beats Utnapishtim every time. The trustworthiness of wisdom, the trustworthiness of God is found in its trail of success here in these verses. But even more in verses 22 and 31 says that the reason for that success is that wisdom has always been with God. And we're gonna put your waders on. We're gonna get a little deeper here. Are you ready? That even in creation, wisdom existed. Remember that Solomon is presenting wisdom as a person, as a woman in this poetic book. And in these verses, he says that this wisdom has always been with God. That even creation is a result of this wisdom that is the wisdom of God. I love this section. Let me read it again, verses 27 through 31. It says, when he established the heavens, I was there. When he drew a circle on the face of the deep. When he made from the skies above. When he established the foundations of the deep. When he assigned to the sea its limit, so that the waters might not transgress his command. When he marked out the foundations of the earth. Then, wisdom says, I was beside him like a master workman, and I was daily his delight, rejoicing before him always, rejoicing in his inhabited world and delighting in the children of man. It resembles the reality of the end of the book of Job for those who are familiar with it. And Job's in this conversation and God just is about to say, this is who I am. Who are you, Job? And he says, where were you when I formed the earth? Where were you when I set the boundaries? And here wisdom is saying, I was with God. What is Solomon leaning into? He's leaning into the fact that wisdom is not a counterpart or a partner of God, that wisdom is the very nature of God. He's the ever-present God. Wisdom is not a created thing of God, it is God. And even as he made the heavens and the earth out of nothing, he did it from his wisdom. And it is the same wisdom now that instructs us how to live in this earth. So when a flood is coming, Noah knows to listen to the seemingly crazy and ridiculous instruction of God to build a boat. And so does David and everyone in between them and everyone since. And here's the point for us today as we read this. Know that wisdom calls. Know that wisdom can be trusted. And in that, know that today God calls you and that God can be trusted. The point, as Solomon finishes, is listen. Listen to the call of wisdom. Look at these last verses, verses 32 through 36. And now, says Solomon, O sons, listen to me. Blessed are those who keep my ways. Hear instruction and be wise, and do not neglect it. Blessed is the one who listens to me, watching daily at my gates, waiting beside my doors. For whoever finds me finds life and obtains favor from the Lord. But he who fails to find me injures himself, and all who hate me love death. Wisdom calls out. It says, I'm here. Wisdom says, I can be trusted. Just look back. Wisdom says, I am the very nature of God who created heaven and earth. Listen to me. Listen to my laws. Listen to my precepts. Listen to my word. Listen to the Spirit of God as it riles up within you, even when it doesn't make sense. Solomon says to Rehoboam, his son, son, listen and be blessed. Find wisdom and find God, and find life. And likewise, the Spirit of God says to us today, listen and be blessed. I've said often through this series, and as we begin to wrap up that series, I want to be something that is left with you. We know something that even Solomon didn't know, that this wisdom actually finds its fulfillment in the coming of Jesus. Jesus stands in the midst of our temptations and he calls out to us. So hear this, as we take Jesus back through this text, listen to what it means. Jesus stands in the midst of our temptation and he calls out to us. Jesus has come to us. It's the story of Christmas. It's the incarnation that from the heavens above, God in his mercy sends his Son. He takes on flesh to dwell with us as wisdom. And he's done this for us. Not the intellectual, not even the religious. But it is obvious in the Gospels that Jesus came for the destitute, not for the healthy, but for the sick. He came for the prostitute, and he came for the crooked tax collector. He came for the sinner. He came for the desperate. He came for the hopeless. He came for the, Mr. T, the fool. He came for me. And he came for you. And he came as a rival and a victor over wickedness. He spoke into the life of the demon-possessed and he gave freedom. He spoke into the lives of people like the woman at the well who lived in shame and spoke grace. He spoke into the isolation of the woman with the incurable bleeding and he spoke wholeness and healing. Through the cross, people of God, he spoke into sin and paid its penalty and delivered us all from death and spoke life. Just like verse 35 says, "For whoever finds me finds life." That should sound familiar. Jesus spoke those words. Jesus carries a track record of absolute victory, and he can be trusted. And Jesus likewise existed from the beginning of time. He was there at creation, and he knows what works in the world because he made the world. And people of God, wherever you are at, the circumstances that you find yourself, I want you to hear that today wisdom calls, but even more so that Jesus calls. He says, trust him. He invites you to follow him, to listen. Are we listening? God knows us. God knows me. I think he's talked to my wife, and he knows that sometimes, even though the call is clear, I'm not listening. I tried to find the origination of the whole idea of putting your fingers in your ears and going la 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 la, because that was the image that I got, right? La 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 la. So I found it in Beverly Hills Cop. I don't think that was the origination. I found it in The Simpsons. It was definitely not the origination. Also, there's a band called Naughty Boys that wrote a whole entire song on putting your fingers in your ears going la 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 la, but I don't even know who Naughty Boys are. The origination is Proverbs 8. That's what he's called. He's, oh, my sons, don't put your fingers in your ears and go la 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 and follow after your own ways. Listen. Listen. And be blessed forevermore. Jack Ryan sat in a really unfamiliar and uncomfortable seat. But there was a voice, a Russian commander, telling him what he needed to do. And Jack Ryan found his success by not thinking, just doing what he was told. We sit in the driver's seat of our lives. We are privileged to have a commander better than the Russian one. We have God, who by his word and by his spirit calls to us. May we listen. Do as he says and be blessed.